The air was thick with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt as Malik walked home from Jefferson High, his sneakers slapping against the cracked sidewalk. It was late October in Easton, a small industrial town in Pennsylvania where the steel mills had long since rusted over, leaving behind a community that clung to old grudges like life rafts. Malik, 16, kept his hood up, not because of the drizzle but because it made him feel safer, less exposed. His brown skin stood out in this part of town, where the faces were mostly pale, and the stares were sharp enough to cut. He was halfway down Franklin Street when he heard the familiar jeer. "Yo, Malik, where you running to, boy?" The voice belonged to Connor Reed, a senior at Jefferson who'd made it his mission to remind Malik he didn't belong. Connor leaned against a chain-link fence, his Letterman jacket slung over one shoulder, flanked by his usual crew. Jake, who always laughed too loud, and Ethan, whose eyes glinted with something darker than mischief. Malik's stomach tightened, but he kept walking, eyes fixed on the corner store 2 blocks away. "Don't engage," he told himself, "just keep moving." "You deaf now?" Connor called, louder this time, his voice slicing through the quiet street. Malik heard the scuffle of sneakers behind him, the pack closing in. He quickened his pace, but not fast enough. A hand grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. Connor's face was inches from his breath sour with cheap energy drink. "I asked you a question." Malik's jaw clenched. He was tall for his age, broad-shouldered from years of pickup basketball, but he wasn't a fighter. Not yet. "I'm just going home, man," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I ain't bothering nobody." Connor smirked, glancing back at his friends like a performer feeding off applause. "Ain't bothering nobody," he mimicked, pitching his voice high. "You bother me just by being here, you know that?" Jake snickered, and Ethan spat on the ground, his eyes never leaving Malik. Malik tried to step back, but Connor's grip tightened. "What's in the bag?" he demanded, nodding at Malik's backpack. It was nothing special, just books, a half-eaten sandwich, his math homework. But Malik knew it wasn't about the bag. It was about power, about making him feel small. "It's just school stuff," Malik said, his voice low. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, the urge to shove Connor back, to do something. But he remembered his mom's words. "They want you to react, baby. Don't give them the satisfaction." Connor yanked the backpack off Malik's shoulder before he could stop him, unzipping it and dumping the contents onto the wet sidewalk. A notebook landed in a puddle, the ink blurring. Malik's sandwich hit the ground, the plastic wrap splitting open. "Oops," Connor said, grinning. Jake laughed, kicking the notebook further into the muck. Malik's hands balled into fists, but he stayed still, his heart pounding. He could take a punch, maybe even throw one, but 3 against 1? He wasn't stupid. "You done?" he asked, his voice tight. Connor stepped closer, his grin fading. "You don't get to talk to me like that," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "You think you're tough? You think you belong here?" He shoved Malik hard, sending him stumbling back. Malik caught himself against a lamppost, his palm stinging from the impact. "I live here," Malik said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "Same as you." Connor's face twisted like the idea was an insult. "You don't belong nowhere near me," he spat. He swung before Malik could react, a fist catching him in the jaw. Pain exploded across Malik's face and he tasted blood. He staggered but didn't fall, his vision swimming. Jake and Ethan closed in, their laughter gone, replaced by something eager, hungry. Malik braced himself, but before Connor could swing again, a car horn blared. Mrs. Delgado, the corner store owner, leaned out of her beat-up sedan, her face furious. "You boys leave him alone!" she shouted, her voice carrying over the street. "I'm calling the cops right now!" Connor froze, his fist still raised. He glanced at his friends, then back at Malik, his eyes burning with hate. "This ain't over," he muttered, stepping back. The 3 of them retreated, disappearing around the corner as Mrs. Delgado's car idled nearby. Malik stood there, breathing hard, his jaw throbbing. He knelt to gather his things, the notebook now a soggy mess, his sandwich ruined. Mrs. Delgado got out of her car, her face softening. "You okay, mijo?" she asked, her accent thick with concern. "Yeah," Malik lied, shoving his stuff back into his bag. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. The pain in his jaw was nothing compared to the weight in his chest, the humiliation that clung to him like damp clothes. He thanked Mrs. Delgado and walked the rest of the way home, his hood pulled low, his eyes on the ground. At home, Malik avoided his mom's questions. She was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of collards, her nurse's scrub still on from her shift at the hospital. "What happened to your face?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as she noticed the swelling along his jaw. Fell at school, Malik mumbled, grabbing a soda from the fridge. He didn't want to worry her. She had enough on her plate. Bills, long hours, the constant stress of keeping them afloat after his dad left 3 years ago. She didn't buy it, but she let it go, her silence heavy with unspoken worry. Malik retreated to his room, a small space with peeling wallpaper and a single window overlooking the alley. He sat on his bed, staring at the bruise forming in the mirror. Connor's words echoed in his head. "You don't belong here." Easton hadn't always felt like this. When Malik's family moved here 5 years ago, the town seemed quiet, unremarkable. But over time, the cracks showed. The whispers in the grocery store. The way teachers called on him less, their eyes skimming over him like he was invisible. The way Connor and his crew had singled him out freshman year, starting with taunts and escalating to shoves, then fists. It wasn't just them. Other kids joined in, some with words, others with silence, their laughter a tacit approval. School was no better. Jefferson High was a mix of kids from different backgrounds, but the lines were drawn early. The cafeteria tables were unspoken territories, the white kids, the black kids, the Latinos, the few Asians. Malik tried to keep to himself, sticking with his friend Darius, a wiry junior who'd moved from Philly and had a knack for diffusing tension with jokes. But even Darius couldn't shield him from Connor's crew. The next day at school, Malik felt the weight of eyes on him. His jaw was still sore, a faint bruise hidden under concealer he'd borrowed from his mom. He kept his head down in the halls, but Connor was waiting by the lockers, leaning casually like a predator biding its time. "Looking rough, Malik," he said, loud enough for others to hear. A few kids snickered, their phones already out, ready to capture whatever came next. Malik ignored him, shoving his books into his locker. Darius appeared beside him, his voice low. "Don't let him get to you, man. He's just a punk with too much time." "Easier said than done," Malik muttered, slamming his locker shut. He could feel Connor's stare, the challenge in it. The bell rang and he headed to English, hoping to avoid another confrontation. But Connor wasn't done. In the cafeteria at lunch, he accidentally bumped Malik's tray, sending his food crashing to the floor. Mashed potatoes and gravy splattered across Malik's sneakers, and the room erupted in laughter. "My bad," Connor said, his smile venomous. Jake and Ethan were there, as always, their presence a wall Malik couldn't break through. Malik stood there, the tray shaking in his hands. He wanted to swing it, to smash it across Connor's face, to make him feel the helplessness Malik felt every day. But he saw the teachers watching from the corner, their faces blank, and he knew they wouldn't do anything. They never did. Not when Connor called him slurs in the hall. Not when Ethan tripped him in gym. Not when Jake wrote "Go back to Africa" on his locker last spring, the marker still faintly visible under the paint. Darius pulled him away, muttering, "Come on, man, it ain't worth it." But Malik's blood was boiling, his vision narrowing. He didn't want to run anymore. He didn't want to hide. That afternoon after school, Malik took a different route home, cutting through the old park near the river. It was quieter there, the trees bare and the swings creaking in the wind. He thought he was alone until he heard the crunch of leaves behind him. He turned, and there was Connor, alone this time, his hands in his pockets. "Thought you could avoid me?" Connor said, his voice calm but laced with menace. "You're real good at running, Malik." Malik's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "What do you want, Connor? You got a problem, just say it." Connor laughed, stepping closer. "My problem? You. People like you. Coming here. Acting like you own the place. You don't belong in Easton. You don't belong at Jefferson. You don't belong anywhere." The words hit harder than the punch had. Malik's fists clenched, his nails digging into his palms. "I was born here," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "This is my home." Connor's smile was cold. Not for long. He lunged, faster than Malik expected, tackling him to the ground. The impact knocked the breath out of Malik, and he felt Connor's fist slamming into his ribs, his face. He fought back, swinging wildly, catching Connor in the nose. Blood sprayed, and Connor cursed, his weight shifting just enough for Malik to scramble free. They stood, panting, circling each other like animals. Malik's face was wet with blood, his ribs aching, but he didn't back down. "You want to keep going?" he said, his voice raw. "I'm right here." Connor wiped his nose, his eyes wild. For a moment, Malik thought he'd charge again, but then Connor spat on the ground and backed off. "You're not worth it," he said, turning and walking away. Malik stood there, his body screaming with pain, his mind racing. He'd fought back, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like survival, and he was tired of just surviving. Malik limped home through the park, his ribs aching with every step. The taste of blood lingered in his mouth and his left eye was swelling shut, the skin tight and hot. The adrenaline from the fight with Connor was fading, replaced by a heavy, gnawing dread. He'd stood his ground, but at what cost? Connor wasn't the type to let things go, and Malik knew this was only the beginning. When he reached his apartment building, he took the stairs slowly, avoiding the elevator where neighbors might see him. His mom was still at work, thank God, but his little sister, Aisha, was home, sprawled on the couch with her math homework. She was 12, all elbows and curiosity, and her eyes widened when she saw him. "Malik, what happened?" she gasped, jumping up. "Nothing," he said, turning away to hide his face. "Just tripped at the park." Aisha wasn't fooled. She followed him to the bathroom, her voice sharp. "You're lying. Did someone hit you? Was it those boys again?" Malik ignored her, splashing cold water on his face. The mirror showed a stranger, one eye puffy, a cut on his lip, blood crusted on his cheek. He looked like he'd been in a war, not a schoolyard brawl. Aisha stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression a mix of worry and anger. "You gotta tell Mom or the school. This ain't right." "Nobody's gonna do nothing, Aisha," Malik snapped, his voice harsher than he meant. He softened, seeing her flinch. "Just don't tell Mom, okay? She's got enough to deal with." Aisha's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. "Fine, but you're dumb if you think this is just gonna stop." Malik didn't answer. He cleaned himself up as best he could, using ice from the freezer to ease the swelling. Aisha hovered nearby, silent but watchful, her presence a reminder of why he couldn't just give up. She was starting at Jefferson next year, and the thought of her facing Connor's crew, or worse, made his stomach twist. That night, Malik barely slept. Every creak of the apartment building sounded like footsteps, every shadow a threat. He kept replaying the fight, the way Connor's eyes had burned with hate, the way his own fists had felt connecting with Connor's face. He wasn't proud of it, but he wasn't sorry either. For the first time, he'd fought back, and it changed something in him, even if he couldn't name it. The next morning, Malik considered skipping school. His face looked worse in the daylight, the bruises darker, the cut on his lips scabbing over. But staying home meant explaining to his mom, and he wasn't ready for that. He pulled on a hoodie, kept the hood up, and headed out, his backpack heavy with the weight of yesterday's ruined notebook. Jefferson High felt different today, the halls louder, the air charged. Word of the fight had spread, as things always did in Easton. Kids whispered as Malik passed, their eyes darting to his bruised face. Some looked curious, others amused, a few sympathetic. Darius found him by the lockers, his usual grin replaced by a frown. "Man, you look like you went 10 rounds with a truck," he said, keeping his voice low. "You good?" Malik shrugged, wincing as the motion tugged at his sore ribs. "I'll live." Darius glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "Heard Connor's telling everyone he whooped you. Says you started it too." Malik's jaw tightened. "Let him talk. I ain't hiding." Darius shook his head. "You don't get it, man. Connor's dad's tight with the principal, and half the teachers eat out of his hand. You think they're gonna take your side?" Malik didn't answer. He knew Darius was right. Connor's dad, a former cop turned security consultant, had pull in Easton. Malik's mom, a single black nurse working double shifts, didn't have that kind of clout. The deck was stacked, and Malik was tired of pretending it wasn't. In English class, Miss Harper, one of the few teachers Malik liked, noticed his face. She was young, barely out of college, with a habit of quoting poetry and pushing her glasses up her nose. "Malik, can I talk to you after class?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. He nodded, dreading the conversation. When the bell rang, he stayed behind, his classmates filing out with sidelong glances. Miss Harper closed the door, her expression serious. "What happened to you?" she asked. No preamble. Malik hesitated. He liked Miss Harper, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Got in a fight," he said finally. "It's no big deal." "It doesn't look like no big deal," she said, her eyes searching his. "Was this at school? Who was it?" Malik looked away, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "It was after school, just some kid. I handled it." Miss Harper sighed, pushing her glasses up. "Malik, I'm not blind. I see what goes on in the halls, the way certain kids target you. If you tell me who did this, I can help." Malik almost laughed. Help? He'd heard that before. Counselors, teachers, even the principal last year when his locker got vandalized. Nothing changed. "I'm good, Miss Harper," he said, standing. "Can I go?" She looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. "My door's open if you change your mind." He left, the weight of her words lingering. Part of him wanted to believe her, but he'd learned the hard way that adults' promises were as flimsy as paper. At lunch, the cafeteria was a minefield. Malik sat with Darius at their usual table, but he felt exposed, like a target painted on his back. Connor wasn't there. Darius said he'd been called to the principal's office, but Jake and Ethan were, their eyes locked on Malik from across the room. A new face joined them. Sarah, a junior with bleach blonde hair and a reputation for stirring trouble. She wasn't part of Connor's core crew, but she'd been hanging around them lately, her laughter sharp and mean. "Yo, check this out," Darius muttered, nodding towards Sarah. She was holding her phone, showing something to Jake and Ethan. Their laughter carried over the cafeteria noise, and Malik's gut told him it was about him. Sure enough, Sarah stood, her phone in hand, and sauntered toward their table. "Hey, Malik," she said, her voice syrupy with fake concern. "Heard you got in a little scuffle. You okay?" Malik didn't answer, his eyes on his tray. Darius leaned forward, his voice low. "Keep walking, Sarah." She ignored him, holding up her phone. "You sure you're okay? 'Cause this video's going around, and you don't look so good in it." She turned the screen toward Malik, and there it was. Grainy footage of the park fight, shot from a distance. It showed Connor tackling him, the punches, Malik scrambling to his feet. The angle made it look like Malik was the aggressor, swinging wildly while Connor defended himself. The video cut off before Connor backed away, leaving the story incomplete. Malik's heart sank. Someone had been there, hiding, recording, and now it was spreading. "Who took that?" he demanded, his voice low. Sarah shrugged, smirking. "Does it matter? It's on X now. Everybody's seen it." She walked away, her laughter trailing behind her. Darius cursed under his breath. "Man, this is bad. If the school sees that, they're gonna pin it on you." Malik's hands shook, his food forgotten. He felt trapped, like the walls of the cafeteria were closing in. The video wasn't just humiliation. It was evidence, twisted to make him the villain. He could already imagine the principal's office, the suspension, his mom's face when she found out. After lunch, Malik skipped his next class, hiding out in the library's back corner. He pulled out his phone, searching X for the video. It was there, posted by an anonymous account, already with dozens of retweets and comments. "Thug gets what he deserves," one read. "Keep Easton clean," said another. The slurs were worse, cutting deeper than Connor's fists ever could. Malik's throat tightened, his eyes burning. He wanted to scream, to break something, to make someone understand what it felt like to be hunted in his own town. But who would listen? Not the principal, who'd once told him to ignore the taunts. Not the kids sharing the video, laughing like it was a game. Not even Miss Harper, with her good intentions and empty promises. He was alone, and Easton was closing in around him. That afternoon, Malik walked home with Darius, sticking to busier streets to avoid another ambush. Darius tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes about their math teacher's bad toupee, but Malik barely heard him. His mind was on the video, the comments, the way Connor's hate had spread like a virus, infecting everyone around him. At the corner of Franklin Street, they saw Aisha waiting by the store, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She wasn't supposed to be out this late. She usually went to the community center after school, but there she was, her face stormy. "Malik, you gotta see this," she said, holding out her phone. It was another video, this one newer, posted an hour ago. It showed Malik's locker, the one he thought had been cleaned last spring. Someone had taken a marker and rewritten the same words, "Go back to Africa." The camera panned to show kids in the hall, some laughing, others looking away. The post was tagged with Malik's name, ensuring he'd see it. Aisha's eyes were wet with anger. "This is messed up, Malik. You can't just let them do this." Malik's chest felt like it was caving in. He wanted to protect Aisha, to tell her it would be okay, but the lie stuck in his throat. "Go home, Aisha," he said, his voice hollow. "I'll handle it." She didn't move, her fist clenched. "No, I'm telling Mom. And if you won't tell the school, I will." Darius put a hand on her shoulder. "Chill, lil sis, we got this." But they didn't. Malik knew it, and so did Aisha. She stormed off, leaving Malik and Darius in silence. The weight of her words lingered. You can't just let them do this. But what could he do? Fight Connor again? Confront the whole school? Every option felt like a trap, designed to prove he was the problem, the outsider, the threat. Malik barely made it through the front door before his mom was on him. She was home early, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, her face a storm of worry and anger. Aisha stood behind her, arms crossed, her eyes guilty but defiant. Malik knew instantly. She'd told. "What is this, Malik?" his mom demanded, holding up her phone. It was the video of the park fight, paused on a frame where Connor's fist connected with Malik's face. And don't you dare tell me you fell or tripped or any of that nonsense. Aisha showed me everything, the fight, the locker, the posts on that damn app. You think I'm blind? Malik dropped his backpack by the door, his shoulders slumping. He wanted to be angry at Aisha for snitching, but he was too tired. It's just some kids at school, Mom, he said, his voice flat. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Her voice cracked, and Malik saw the tears she was fighting back. My son comes home with bruises, his locker defaced with that hate, and you tell me it's not a big deal? Malik, I raised you better than to lie to me. He looked away, his jaw tight. The kitchen felt too small, the walls pressing in. Aisha shifted uncomfortably, her earlier bravado gone. I'm sorry, Malik, she mumbled, but you weren't going to say nothing. Enough, their mom said, cutting her off. She turned back to Malik, her eyes searching his face, the bruises, the cut lip, the exhaustion he couldn't hide. Who did this to you? And don't give me some kids. I want names. Malik hesitated. Naming Connor felt like stepping into a trap. His dad's connections, the school's indifference, the way Easton protected its own, it would only make things worse. But his mom's stare was unrelenting, and he knew she wouldn't let it go. Connor Reed, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Him and his friends. His mom's face hardened. The Reed boy? The one whose father's always at the school board meetings? She shook her head, pacing the small kitchen. I should have known. That family's been trouble since we moved here. Mom, just leave it, Malik said, his voice sharper than he meant. Going to the school won't do nothing, it'll just make it worse. She stopped pacing, her hands on her hips. You think I'm gonna sit here and let them hurt my son? Let them write that filth on your locker? Malik, I've been dealing with this town's nonsense longer than you have. I know how they operate, but I'm not afraid of them, and neither should you be. Malik wanted to believe her, but fear wasn't the issue. It was futility. He'd seen how complaints got swept under the rug, how teachers looked the other way, how the principal shook hands with Connor's dad like they were old buddies. They don't care, Mom, he said, his voice breaking. Nobody does. She stepped closer, her hand gentle on his cheek, careful of the bruises. I care, she said softly. Aisha cares, Darius cares. You're not alone, baby, even if it feels like it. Malik's throat tightened, and he looked away, blinking back the sting in his eyes. He wanted to tell her everything. The taunts, the shoves, the way the word thug followed him like a shadow. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he nodded, letting her pull him into a hug. For a moment, he felt safe, like he was 10 again, before Easton's ugliness had shown itself. But safety was fleeting. That night, as Malik lay in bed, his phone buzzed with a new notification. Another X post, this one a photo of his apartment building, the brick wall outside tagged with a racial slur in bright red spray paint. The caption read, "Know your place." No name, no face, but Malik knew who was behind it. His hand shook as he deleted the app, but the image was burned into his mind. The next day at school, the atmosphere was electric with gossip. The video of the fight had spread beyond Jefferson, shared by kids from neighboring schools, even adults in Easton's local X groups. Malik felt the weight of every stare, every whisper. His locker had been cleaned, someone had finally scrubbed off the marker, but the memory lingered, a stain no paint could cover. In the halls, Connor was back, his nose bruised but his swagger intact. He didn't approach Malik directly, but his presence was a taunt, his laughter a weapon. Jake and Ethan trailed him, their eyes daring Malik to react. Sarah was there too, her phone always out, capturing moments to twist and share. Miss, Harper pulled Malik aside again during English, her face grim. I saw the video, she said, her voice low, and I heard about your locker. Malik, this isn't just bullying. This is harassment, hate crimes. You need to report it. Malik stared at the floor, his hands in his pockets. What's the point? You know how it works here. Connor's dad will make it go away. Miss Harper's lips pressed into a thin line. Not if I have anything to say about it. I'm filing a report with the district, whether you want me to or not. This stops now. Malik wanted to argue, to tell her it was pointless, but her determination was a flicker of hope he couldn't ignore. Just don't make it worse, he said finally. She nodded, but her eyes were fierce. I won't let them bury this, Malik, I promise. Her promise felt fragile, but it was something. Malik held on to it, even as the day wore on and the taunts grew bolder. In gym, Ethan accidentally elbowed him during basketball, hard enough to leave a bruise. In the cafeteria, someone left a note on his tray. "Leave or else." Darius crumpled it up, cursing under his breath, but Malik just stared at his food, his appetite gone. That evening, Malik's mom went to the school. She didn't tell him until she was already out the door, her purse slung over her shoulder, her face set like she was going to war. "Stay with Aisha," she said. "I'm meeting with the principal." Malik paced the apartment, his sneakers wearing a path in the linoleum. Aisha sat on the couch, her math homework forgotten, her eyes flicking between Malik and the clock. Their mom had been gone for over an hour, and the silence was suffocating. Malik's phone buzzed with notifications. More X posts, more comments, more hate, but he ignored it, shoving the device into his pocket. He didn't need to see another slur or threat to know what was coming. "Don't worry," Aisha said, her voice small. "Mom's tough. She'll make them listen." Malik didn't answer. He wanted to believe her, but Easton wasn't a place where people like them won. He'd seen it in the way store clerks followed his mom through aisles, in the way cops eyed him when he walked home late, in the way teachers skimmed over his raised hand. His mom was tough, but toughness didn't always matter against a system that protected people like Connor Reed. When the door finally opened, Malik's mom stepped inside, her face a mask of exhaustion and fury. She set her purse down hard, the keys clattering on the counter. Malik and Aisha waited, the air heavy with unspoken questions. "They're suspending Connor," she said finally, her voice tight. 3 days. "And they're investigating the locker and the videos. But you know what that means?" Malik's heart sank. 3 days was nothing, a slap on the wrist. And an investigation? That was just code for stalling until everyone forgot. "What'd they say about his dad?" he asked, already dreading the answer. His mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "Principal Carter swore up and down that Mr. Reed has no influence over this. But I saw the way he avoided my eyes. They're scared of that man, Malik, scared of his money, his connections, his loud mouth at those board meetings." Aisha's voice piped up, indignant. "That's not fair!" Connor beat up Malik, and they're just gonna let him come back? "Life ain't fair, baby," their mom said, her voice softening as she looked at Aisha. "But I'm not done. I told them I'm taking this to the district if they don't do right. And Miss Harper was there. She's pushing for a real investigation, not just their usual nonsense." Malik's chest tightened at the mention of Miss Harper. Her promise in English class had felt like a lifeline, but now it seemed fragile, like a thread stretched too thin. "What happens when Connor comes back?" he asked, his voice low. "You think he's gonna stop?" His mom didn't answer right away. She sank into a chair, rubbing her temples. "I don't know, Malik, but we're not running. This is our home, and I'll be damned if they push us out." Her words were fierce, but Malik saw the strain in her eyes, the weight of years spent fighting battles she shouldn't have to. He wanted to say something, to promise he'd be strong, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he nodded, retreating to his room to escape the suffocating tension. That night, he lay awake, the spray-painted slur on their building flashing in his mind. He wondered if Connor had done it himself, or if one of his crew had snuck out with a can of paint. It didn't matter. The message was clear. You don't belong. And now, with Connor's suspension, the target on Malik's back had grown bigger. The next day at school, the air was thick with anticipation. Connor wasn't there, but his absence was a presence, a ghost haunting every hallway. Kids whispered about the fight, the videos, the suspension. Some looked at Malik with pity, others with contempt. A few avoided his eyes altogether, like his bruises were contagious. Darius met him by the lockers, his usual humor subdued. "Heard Connor's telling everyone he's coming for you when he's back," he said, keeping his voice low. "Says you snitched to your mom." Malik's jaw clenched. "I didn't snitch. Aisha did." "Doesn't matter," Darius said, glancing around. "They're spinning it like you ran crying to the principal. Jake and Ethan are eating it up. And Sarah's posting more crap on X, pictures of your locker, your building. She's calling it justice." Malik's stomach twisted. Sarah's involvement was new, and it stung in a different way. She wasn't just following Connor's lead. She was amplifying it, turning his pain into a spectacle for likes and retweets. "What's her deal?" he muttered. "She wasn't even there," Darius shrugged. "Some people just like the drama, or maybe she's got her own beef. Her dad's one of those keep Easton pure types, always whining about outsiders at town meetings." Malik didn't need to hear more. He knew the type. Men like Sarah's dad, like Connor's dad, who cloaked their hate in talk of tradition and community. They didn't throw punches, but their words built the world where Connor's fists could fly. In the cafeteria, the harassment took a new form. Malik was grabbing his tray when Ethan bumped into him, hard enough to make him stumble. "Watch where you're going," Ethan said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Laughter rippled through the room, and Malik saw Sarah's phone flash, capturing the moment. He gripped the tray, his knuckles whitening. Darius was at his side in an instant, his voice low. "Don't, man, they're baiting you." Malik knew he was right, but the urge to swing was overwhelming. He forced himself to walk away, his tray untouched, and sat at their usual table. The note from yesterday was still in his pocket, crumpled but heavy. "Leave or else." He hadn't shown it to anyone, not even Darius. It felt like a secret he had to carry alone, a warning that grew louder with every stare. "Miss." Harper caught him after English again, her face taut with worry. "The district's reviewing the report," she said. "I've got colleagues backing me up, and we're pushing for real consequences, not just suspensions, but policy changes. This school's been ignoring hate for too long." Malik nodded, but her words felt distant, like a radio playing in another room. Policy changes wouldn't stop Ethan's elbows or Sarah's posts. They wouldn't erase the paint on his building or the bruise on his jaw. "Thanks," he said, because it was what she wanted to hear. She studied him, her glasses slipping down her nose. "You don't have to go through this alone, Malik. There are people who want to help. You just have to let them." He wanted to believe her, but trust was a muscle he'd overworked. He mumbled an excuse and left, the weight of her words dragging behind him. That afternoon, the harassment spilled beyond school. Malik was walking home, taking the long route to avoid the park, when he noticed a group of kids trailing him. Not Connor's crew, younger, maybe freshmen, but their eyes had the same glint, their laughter the same edge. One of them, a skinny kid with a buzz cut, called out, "Yo, Malik! Heard you're famous now." Malik kept walking, his hood up, but the group followed, their voices growing bolder. "Why you still here, man? Nobody wants you," another shouted. A rock sailed past his head, skittering across the sidewalk. Malik's heart raced, but he didn't turn. Running would only make it worse. He made it to Franklin Street, where Mrs. Delgado was sweeping the sidewalk outside her store. She saw the group and stepped forward, her broom raised like a weapon. "Get out of here!" she shouted, her voice fierce. "You leave that boy alone!" The kids scattered, their laughter echoing down the street. Mrs. Delgado turned to Malik, her face softening. "You okay, mijo?" "Yeah," Malik lied, his voice hoarse. "Thanks." She shook her head, muttering something in Spanish about niños sin vergüenzas. "You tell your mama about this," she said. "She needs to know." Malik nodded, but he had no intention of telling his mom. She was already fighting a war she couldn't win. He thanked Mrs. Delgado again and walked the rest of the way home, his eyes scanning every shadow. At the apartment, Aisha was waiting, her face pale. "Malik, look outside," she said, pointing to the window. He followed her gaze and froze. The spray paint on the building was gone, scrubbed clean by the landlord, but someone had left something new. A piece of cardboard taped to the wall, scrawled with the same slur from the X post. "Know your place," it read, the words in jagged black marker. Malik's knees buckled and he sank onto the couch. Aisha grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "We gotta tell Mom. Malik, please." He shook his head, his vision blurring. "No, she can't fix this. Then what are we gonna do?" Aisha's voice broke and Malik saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he felt but couldn't name. She was just a kid and Easton was already teaching her its lessons. "I don't know," he whispered, and for the first time he felt like he was drowning.